This video is sponsored by Game Toppers. Turn your own kitchen or dining room table into a premium portable game solution at a fraction of the cost. Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 769. Today we're going to talk about the Star Wars The Deck Building game. This is a relatively new release from Fantasy Flight Games. It is a two-player only deck building game, although there are official rules online, I believe now, that if you have two sets you can play kind of 2v2 as teams, but I've not tried that. I've only played what's in the base box here. And what it is one side is the Rebellion, the other side are the Imperials, and so you're going head to head, building your decks as you play, trying to damage and attack each other as you build your decks, but you also are damaging and attacking the center row of cards that you will draft into your deck. You can also damage the other side. And there's also a little force element where you can kind of monkey with the force, and that'll give you different bonuses if the force is on your side of the equation there. So let's jump down to the table and I'll show you how it works, and I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, here it's got everything set up for the game, and I apologize, I really need like a space mat. It does not work really with this game here. So there's a few elements you can see. Here you've got your center kind of row of cards. These are the cards you're going to be purchasing or attacking. Now notice I have all of these kind of facing this direction, but you've got here a Imperial card. So if I'm the Imperial player, when we draw this card out of the deck and I'm sitting here like you can see here, this is the way it will look. Now this is a Rebel card here. So if we're in the same position, then what we would do is we would turn this like so and put that right there. The reason being, if I'm an Imperial player, then I'm most interested in buying this TIE Interceptor, adding it to my deck, and then using it later on. But this Rebel card, I cannot buy it. So what I would want to do is attack it here, and you can see here's the attack value, and then get a reward for attacking it. So depending on which side of the table you're sitting on, you'll orient these faction-specific cards to that player. Now there are some neutral cards here that you can see there's nothing to attack, and either player can buy them as well. And then over on the side here, there's this little stack of Outer Rim pilots that you can also purchase. So speaking of purchasing, you can see here's the purchase cost. Here's kind of the ability of the card. When you play the card out of your deck later on, you can do the ability. You can also generate any of the icons and resources that you see here. So let's look at a good example. So we take a look at the Rebel starting deck, which is basically the exact same as the Imperial. You can generate 2 combat, you can generate resources here with these little sort of market tokens there. Some of these will give you a choice here, so you can see this Temple Guardian. When you play this, they can gain a combat, a resource, or you can actually manipulate the force, which you can see here. And sometimes things will do multiple. So if we see this example here, this is a neutral capital ship. Now you see capital ships are kind of sideways. So when you get these, they go into your deck just like normal when you purchase them. And then when they come back out and you play them, they will stay up in front of you. And then every turn, they will generate this for you. So they will generate 1 combat and 1 resource. And if there's any other special abilities or anything like that, they'll do that. They have a defensive value, and so they will need to be attacked. If you have any capital ships out, they will need to be attacked before your opponent can attack your planet. So both players have a starting planet. So the Rebels will always start with Dantooine. The Imperials will also always start with Lothal. Now there's a few ways to kind of build your deck here of your planets. Kind of the standard game is when your planet's destroyed, then you can start to decide out of the other 10 that you have, which one you're going to put out next. And so they're going to have different special abilities and different defensive values and so on. And the standard game is you play till you've destroyed 3 of your opponent's planets, and the first one to do that will be the winner. Now you can track a lot of this stuff here with these cubes. So as you are playing through your turn and generating resources, there might be other cool combos and effects that make it a little bit tricky to count. So as you start to generate these, you can just put these yellow cubes in front of you and then spend them as you spend them. And at the end of your turn, if you haven't spent them, you lose them anyway. Now the purple cubes are used to track damage. So when you're damaging something, you can put these on here. So let's say I did, like 5 damage to Dantooine, and then, my opponent got out a ship there. So now I've got to take this out. So as I start to damage this, then this will get destroyed, go back into their deck and to be brought out later if they want. And you can start damaging this again. So once you hit that, then, you know, you'll find the next card and so on. So damage is tracked, you know, turn over turn. Now, as I mentioned before, we've also got the force track here. It starts on the rebel side all the way to the rebel side. The Imperial player always goes first. Now, if you start your turn with the force all the way to your side, you instantly generate 1 resource for spending there to start your turn. If it's anywhere in here, the force is considered to be on your side. You don't get the free resource, but there will be cards and things like that that interact and kind of get bonuses if the force token is on your side. Now, if it's in the middle, nobody gets it, and you can play cards to manipulate this back and forth. But honestly, that is pretty much the whole game. You're going to be buying cards, destroying cards from your opponent in there, trying to damage each other's planets, upgrading your deck, getting cards in your deck, trying to trash some of the beginning cards. There's cards that interact with all different facets of the game. There might be things that get destroyed and go into kind of a universal discard pile that you can then, you know, interact with those with some of the different abilities. There's lots of cool abilities on the different planets and stuff like that. And like I said, you just played so you destroy 3 planets, and there's some other variants and stuff with how you set the planet decks up specifically. And then, like I said at the beginning, there's a team variant which I haven't played yet. But that's pretty much the game. Okay, so that is Star Wars, the deck building game. Okay, the pillars are going to be easy. Player count, only plays 2. I haven't played the team one. Play time, about a half hour for a game once you get going. What is this game like? It's like Star Realms, the game, because you are basically attacking each other and building up your sort of purchasing engine as well as your fighting engine. Now, the main thing, it does a few other things differently, but the main thing is how you can attack the center row and blow up the cards they want to buy, effectively banishing them from the center row. I love that, because a lot of times you will not really have enough to kind of go and do some attack on the player or whatever. You might not really want to do that, but you can attack their stuff that's available, and that typically is going to give you resources, maybe some force points. And that's cool, because then you get extra resources without having to clog your deck up with cards to buy stuff, because the objective of the game is to kill stuff. But if you put a bunch of cards in there to help you buy stuff, you don't have enough to kill stuff. But you want the big cards that do lots of killing, but you need resources for that. So the way that they kind of juggles all those resources and stuff, that's just awesome. And the way that stuff kind of just revolves around each other is really neat. The other kind of main difference, kind of setting it apart from Star Realms, is the whole force track thing. I like that because it gives you just kind of that other thing to sort of tinker with on the edges, and either give you extra resources, which is fine, but then also having some of the cards that deal with that, where it's like, okay, if you play this card, you know, it does like, let's say 3 attack, and then if you have the force on your side, it does 8 attack or something. I think the Darth Vader card's like that. Yeah, so there's a lot of cards like that. And so there's like a rarity, of course, to the deck as well. There's a lot of, you know, X-Wings and stuff like that, and TIE Fighters, but there's like, I think there's only 1 Darth Vader card in the whole deck. So when that comes up, everybody's like, ooh, you know, that's a whole thing. Darth Vader showed up this time. And the game can kind of, you know, turn on that a little bit, which is nice, like narratively. Yeah, so I mean, that is the game. Now, I will say, I enjoy this game. It's very fast-paced. Every time I've started the game, I think I've played it 5 times, 4 or 5, maybe 6 times, but right around 5 times. And every time that I've started lately in the last couple times, it's been like, this is kind of the same. But then once like a planet gets destroyed or something, that decision to be like, okay, what planet am I going to put out here? That's such a cool thing, because based on like how stuff is going, you're like, okay, I can put up one with like the biggest defensive value, or I can put up this one that'll like shift the force all the way over to me, or this one will generate a whole mess of resources or whatever. I can trash some cards or get some cards out of a discard pile or whatever. You can have that cool like little opportune tactical moment of kind of shifting your base, whether the rebel base or the imperial base, moving to that planet. And then that can help kind of swing the game. So they do kind of act as a catch-up mechanism in a way, because, you know, one person's going to destroy the other planet first. They're going to be up, you know, 1 point to 0. And that does good. And so you get a bonus, because the other player hasn't yet flipped their planet, because you haven't destroyed it yet, to get a bonus. So but you both have the abilities in your planet deck. Nobody doesn't really have a better planet deck than the other, I don't think. So that's another really, really neat thing about that. And again, you have the kind of the similar strategies of Star Realms, you know, where you can go like heavy base or heavy synergies, because you can have some cards that like double up on each other and that kind of stuff. Not quite as much as like Star Realms, especially with Star Realms, with some of the expansions, you know, you can go like heavy green or heavy blue or whatever the colors were. And really, with the expansions in Star Realms, you really needed those, I think, to go really flesh out this kind of strategic things. This has less of that, but it does have it in the right amounts. And all those other things I've been kind of talking about help kind of round out the edges. I will say, with all that being said, this is really ripe for an expansion. I don't know what. Maybe it'll never get one, because it's kind of a nice sort of just intro to deck building kind of idea. You know, I can see just new players that aren't familiar with deck building or Star Realms to jump into this, because they go, oh, Star Wars. And, you know, maybe they play Magic or something. I struggle with this, because I don't know if it needs an expansion, because I don't know if that would water it down or not. But if there's room here for something, I just can't tell you what it is. So maybe after players have had this for a little while, and they probably already have one in the works, but there could be some real interesting stuff with this. This doesn't feel like one of those games like a Dominion or a Star Realms or, you know, like an Ascension, for example, that just has expansions coming out year after year after year. I don't think this is that kind of game. I mean, maybe you could have different decks of the cards that you can purchase. So your starting deck would be the same every game. And then the next box could just be another box just like this. And it'll have, you know, all the same starter cards, maybe all the same bases, maybe different bases, I don't know. But the only thing different would be all of the cards in your main sort of purchase deck. And that could just be like you play with one deck or the other. And that's it. Or if you wanted to, you could throw them all together, but they could probably design them. And Ascension kind of does this, where you say, okay, you have like a main set and then like two sets after where you shuffle them in, and then it kind of resets like Magic does. Then you have a new main deck and you just play with that. If you want to shuffle up everything, it's not really balanced for that, but you can do it for fun. And yeah, I can see something like that. That could be fun. Maybe different eras, because this is obviously like Rebel and Imperial. You could come out with like a Clone Wars era one or something like that, or you could mix them all together. Yeah, but I would recommend it. It does enough different for me that I think it's worth highlighting with all the different nuances and stuff that I've talked about. But yeah, I would recommend it. It's not like the greatest deck builder of all time. I don't know why I'm caveating this. But it's just like a nice, perfect little package. Just a quick, simple 2-player game. It's very easy to get into. Straightforward, but it's got a lot of cool stuff around the edges. That's a lot of fun to sort of play with. And the whole attacking the center row, the choosing of the planets when it gets destroyed, those are kind of the two takeaways for me that just, you know, makes me go, let's try this again. Let's try this again. So yeah, I definitely recommend folks give it a shot. Especially, I mean, if you like Star Wars. If you don't, whatever. But it's a really cool mechanical game. And yeah, I recommend it. Thanks.